my name is Isabella, and today I'll be talking about my trip to Costa Rica. I went on a community service intensive trip, so we spent the first little bit working at a farm that was focused on sustainable agriculture. Then we moved to Monteverde, which is like a rainforest reserve, and then we moved to our host families, where we worked at a local library painting a mural for the preschool, and then we finished it all off at a beach resort. Okay, one experience where I learned something. This was within the first couple of days within being at Costa Rica. I think it was like the first full day we were there. We were actually talking with one of the leaders from AFS, and before I went on this program, I had this like preconceived notion that South American and Central American countries like really envied the US and like they looked up to the US, like you know what I'm saying, they wanted to be us, right? And while I saw that like their economy was kind of modeled the same way, I learned that like that view is kind of toxic in a way, because looking at your own country in a way that like it can have no faults, or like other countries want to be like us, you neglect to see the issues. And it was interesting because this particular leader shared his view of the US being unsafe due to like gun violence and different issues that he had seen on the news. And it's really interesting. Costa Rica doesn't have a military, and so to see that dynamic of speaking as someone who comes from a country where the military is really admired by its own people, or it's seen as a necessity, speaking with someone who has not lived in a country with a military. It was a very interesting dynamic, and it really taught me to listen, like to completely absorb everything that anyone tells me on this trip. It really prepared me, because I was almost like shocked by what he said, but I was really eager to learn more and learn why. Why is this experience important? I will definitely cite this experience as a reason for keeping an open mind. Another experience where I learned something, this is another conversation. All of these are conversations. I learned from people the entire time. And even with a language barrier, it was absolutely, I don't know, it was just amazing to see that like with open ears you can gain so much information. On this trip with me were 9 other teenagers from like New York, Chicago, Connecticut, Germany, and St. Louis. And then I'm from North Carolina, and I was kind of the oddball out. Everybody was from a city. And this conversation was surrounding all of the hot button issues that exist in the US. And it was crazy because these are kids who just met each other like a couple days ago, sitting around at coffee time in a country that they like, a completely different country, and we're talking about deep, heavy stuff. Personal issues that we've faced, issues that we know friends have faced, family members, and how they correlate to what everyone is talking about on the news all day long. And gaining those personal experiences, I can now cite other students' experiences as a reason for my beliefs as well. And I think it was really interesting because we all respected each other's opinions, and it was a safe space because we created that space. Not because anyone said these are the rules for how you talk to each other, but because we're all nervous, we're all like kind of ready to experience something new, and so we opened up. This experience cracked us wide open, and that's something I learned about myself through this experience, is that like I can open up and I can share my beliefs and my fears and my concerns and all of that, especially because there's always the security of you're never going to see these people again after this trip. But that's not true, because we'll definitely see each other again. I'm sure of it, because I have built lifelong friendships with these individuals. A challenge I faced abroad. So as I mentioned before, I was like the only individual from a rural area. So sometimes the culture shock of being surrounded by city folk, if you want to call it, was very interesting because I had the dynamic of I was in a different culture because I was in Costa Rica. I was also surrounded by a different U.S. culture while I was there, and I really learned a lot from that experience, and I learned that like there's so many more similarities than there are differences. Let's see. So a challenge I faced was kind of relating to the group in a way, but I mean, that barrier was broken extremely quickly because everyone was supporting one another. And I mean, we relied on each other. We had to depend on one another. And that's really what I took away from this challenge, is that it's okay to depend on someone else. Yes, you want to learn independence from this experience, but independence is only figuring out the connections to other people and how to depend on other people by yourself. That's all independence is, because you can't do it alone. I really want to thank the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation for sending me on this life-changing experience. 8 out of the 10 students that went on this program depended on scholarships from donors like you. And I can't imagine that trip without those 7 other individuals. I just can't see it being the same. I would not have learned as much. I would not have laughed as much. I know I would not have had as much fun, and I know it would not be the same. And so I want to thank all donors. I want to thank anyone that sent students to a foreign country on an AFS program. It truly does change your perspective. This experience will impact my future by giving me a global perspective. Before I went to Costa Rica, everything on my mind dealt with the United States. Everything. I'm talking all my news on my social media. I mean, I have Facebook ads from Costa Rica that I see now, and I'm reminded that I'm not the only one in this universe, in this world, and neither is the United States. It's not the only nation. And so I want to learn more about other places, and I want to keep up with current events from those areas as well. I have family and friends in Costa Rica now, and I've built so many connections through this program, and I've grown a lot as a person. I could see the change in every student that I was with throughout this time. All of my friends changed and grew tremendously as people just because they were exposed to something new. And every time you're exposed to something new, every time you learn something new, you change for the better. My plans now that I'm back, well, I'm continuing on with high school, and I'm going to tell as many people about my trip as I can. I'm also hoping to study abroad in the future, possibly in college. I want to keep traveling. I want to keep learning, and I also want to experience the cultures that are within my own backyard, because I think it's very easy to talk about your day-to-day life and not ask people why they respond in a certain way, or try to figure out why they respond in a certain way. And so having those deep conversations with people right here at home is really important to me. Thank you again for listening, for supporting AFS, and yeah, I'm so thankful for this experience.